how this goes. I'm really excited to see what Gavin's going to start out with, and conversely, what Brendan is going to bring to the table. Looks like Gavin's going to start out with Diggersby and Clefairy, as Brendan goes with Incineroar and Comfey.
Yeah, so the Comfey coming out, ability to set up Trick Room right now, so Brendan can go for something like a Fake Out onto the Clefairy. However, Clefairy in this position often isn't really going to even do very much. The Fake Out doesn't accomplish really anything other than preventing an attack, but normally Clefairy isn't really going for any damaging attacks, and if Gavin has Helping Hand on the Clefairy, you could go for something just like a Helping Hand Max Strike onto the Comfey, just to pick up the knockout onto it immediately, because I think, as we were talking about going into this matchup, you can get Trick Room up in this game, that's really great, but how easy is it to actually get Trick Room up? Looks like Brendan actually decides he doesn't even want the Trick Room, wants to shut down the Clefairy completely with the taunt, so definitely another viable option. But I think Gavin right now is really putting on a lot of pressure with this lead. Even with that Intimidate, Diggersby still does so much damage once Dynamaxed.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons why Brendan is trying to go for the shutdown onto Clefairy, able to kind of pressure with that Follow Me and just kind of draw the attention away from that Diggersby that is going to Dynamax on Gavin's end, because that is going to be quite a bit of offensive pressure coming out from that Diggersby once it gets a chance to Dynamax. And with Clefairy set up by its side, it's such a great partner, supportive partner, in order to just allow Diggersby to do exactly what it wants to do. But the Helping Hand comes through first, and that's going to be a huge boon to this Diggersby, going for the Max Strike early onto Brendan's Comfey. And it gets knocked out.
Yeah, just the clean knockdown. And that's the power of Helping Hand. That was a really safe play on Gavin's end as well, because you actually have higher priority with the Helping Hand, so something like a Fake Out doesn't even stop that. And so, because Brendan's lead was super passive in this first turn, Gavin just gets a free knockout here. Lapras does come out, but this is why the Diggersby Clefairy combination specifically is so strong. You can redirect all those super effective attacks away with something like a Follow Me. Of course, you could also even go for special defense boosts with something like Max Quake on the Diggersby right now, and even though the rain is up, I'm not sure how much like a Max Geyser will do once you get a special defense boost through Max Quake and Clefairy's Friend Guard boosting Diggersby's defenses. So I think this is a pretty tough position for Brendan, because the Politoed just doesn't offer any pressure offensively, and even though Diggersby, can take damage from these two Water-type Pokemon, Clefairy can either redirect it away, or you can just go for something like a Helping Hand Max Quake to potentially pick up the knockout into Politoed. I think Gavin wants to basically just pick up as many knockouts as possible on the non-Dynamax Pokemon and just force, 2v1 position in the late game.
Yeah, I'm looking at Brendan's 4 that he's brought to this first game, and Lapras is kind of the only Pokemon that's left that really provides some offensive pressure. So maybe this Helping Hand from Politoed going to be able to help, but this Max Quake comes through first from Diggersby, able to move super fast, and Politoed doesn't take that handedly at all. With the crit, that's going to be a knockout, second knockout here for Gavin.
Yeah, another knockout immediately, and that's exactly what Diggersby wants to do. I'm wondering if the critical hit mattered, because of course there was that Intimidate onto the Diggersby, but I think Helping Hand's a great play to go for on Politoed, knowing it's probably going to faint. And Max Geyser doesn't pick up the knockout. That's the strength of that special defense boost. A Sing comes out, but Lapras is able to dodge it.
You can see how supportive Clefairy can really be in this instance to just really help shut down the offense and also support the offense on Gavin's side. But the Incineroar coming through is going to get a nice Intimidate off onto Gavin's team again. So that Diggersby is now at -2, I believe.
Yeah, so, I think here Diggersby can safe. You can just go for a Helping Hand Max Quake onto the Incineroar and basically make it a 4v1. I like the same play last one from Gavin's end as well, even though it didn't end up connecting. Might as well go for it, right? Because Clefairy is not in any threat of getting knocked out right now, so if you connect on that Sing, the game is pretty much instantly over. And even if Politoed, were able to survive the Max Quake last turn, there's just not enough damage on the Diggersby right now. These Max Quakes, able to boost that special defense before Lapras can move, also a really big deal. So this is exactly what Gavin wanted to see, right? You want to pick up knockouts every turn with Diggersby, and that's 3 knockouts in 3 turns effectively. So, really, really difficult to come back now, because sure, you have a couple turns left with Lapras in terms of max, one turn specifically, you get the screens up, but where's the damage really coming out? How can you really knock out this Clefairy? Even boosted water type attacks probably take, 2, maybe even 3 hits to KO. So yeah, I think like just so much offense coming from Gavin's end immediately, and he still got 2 Pokemon on the back.
Yeah, and take a look at the fact that Diggersby actually hangs on from the G-Max Resonance. So not only do you get max value from all of your turns of Dynamax from Diggersby, but you also hang on from the G-Max Resonance, which means you get to fire off another attack.
That's a Giga Impact. Not that much damage, but nice play by Gavin, knowing that the Diggersby is going to faint anyway. Might as well just get your strongest move off at that point. So Max Geyser comes out. This is Lapras's last turn to Max. We'll be able to do a hefty amount to the Clefairy, but not even that much. You just see how bulky Clefairy is. It goes for another Zheng. Lapras dodges it again, but I think it's pretty much impossible to pull a 1v4 comeback with the Lapras that doesn't have a weakness policy activated or a Life Orb, because it really just doesn't do enough damage.
Yeah, and it just feels like all of those turns of Dynamax just wasn't enough damage for Brendan to actually get through Gavin's Pokemon. Like, look at how well that Diggersby with those special defense boosts ended up working through those Max Geysers coming through from the Lapras, and with the Clefairy now able to use that Follow Me still after Comfy couldn't get the taunt off. Wow, that was a huge bout of damage coming in from Sylveon, and just secures the final knockout, getting Gavin that game 1.
Yeah, critical hit coming out there, but don't really think it matters in the long run there. Once again, Lapras just does not have enough damage to deal with all these Pokemon, especially Sylveon, that's, pretty specially defensive as well. So, I think the name of that game, that first game, was just having a really safe, consistent lead that covered for the Incineroar Intimidate option. Having the combination of the Dynamax threat plus Clefairy being able to Helping Hand means that you don't really have to worry about the Intimidate whatsoever. So I think going into this next game, Brendan really has to ask himself, how do you weather the storm of Diggersby? Because in that last game, it was able to pick up 3 knockouts in the first 3 turns of the game. And if that happens, I mean, it's pretty much just impossible to come back from. So for me, I think the first Pokemon I really want to point out is the Corviknight. I think Corviknight is able to switch into potential Max Quakes or Max Strikes. And that's a really big deal, because even if you can take one attack from the Diggersby and kind of negate its turn, you can really completely turn the tides, right? Because what that Diggersby wants to do is just pick up knockout after knockout after knockout, but even if you, stall out one of those turns, it just means less turns of Dynamax that you have to deal with. And so I think the idea should be to stall out Dynamax if you're not able to get a Trick Room. If, Brendan wants to offer the Trick Room route, he could consider leading the Gothitelle. But what's tough about the Gothitelle is there's no safe way to guarantee Trick Room, because once again, a Helping Hand Max Strike will just pick up the knockout onto something like Gothitelle or Comfy, even after Intimidate. So, you really have to basically try to stall out the couple of turns from Dynamax on Gavin's end.
Well, let's get into the second game and see if Brendan can do just that. Stall out those turns of Dynamax coming through from Gavin's Diggersby. And if Gavin even decides to go for the Diggersby again, it worked the first game, so doesn't surprise me it's going to be coming out this second game as well. And Brendan going straight for the offensive here, brings up the Lapras next to the Incineroar.
I like the decision to lead Lapras because, if it is carrying that weakness policy, then Diggersby, even if you go for something like Helping Hand Max Lightning, you won't knock out the Lapras and you will activate the weakness policy. Corviknight is in the back this time around, so trying to bait out potentially a Max Quake onto the Incineroar turn 1, and I think this is, a great play to try to just stall out those turns of Dynamax, but Gavin actually switches out the Diggersby into Sylveon, which is, I think, a great play on his end, doesn't get baited into Dynamax in turn 1, and I think that's an excellent decision. It's very easy to just, try to Dynamax and pull the same strategy that you did in that first game, but Gavin does not go for that.
No, and importantly, also gets the reset from the Intimidate drop onto the Diggersby as well, but ooh, Clefairy goes for the Zheng. Lapras dodges it again, but this time from the Protect that it ended up going for. But interesting board state now to look at between Gavin and Brendan with that Corviknight on the field next in front of that Sylveon.
Yeah, that Corviknight switching still works out so nicely because Sylveon and Clefairy really don't have much to damage it whatsoever. And so Brendan actually now able to get up screens relatively safely. Clefairy actually is going to opt to switch out here to try to put on some more damage pressure. And I think, Duraludon, the other Pokemon that we expected to put on a lot of heavy offense in this game. So it's actually going to be Brendan going for the Dynamax this time, or actually the Gigantamax with Lapras. And he's going to be able to, set up the screens with Resonance, going to be able to survive attacks a little bit easier. And with screens and perhaps a couple of bulk ups on Corviknight, this Corviknight can really just tank a lot of the damage. However, Brendan's supposed to worry about the late game Dynamax from Gavin, because even with screens up and with Intimidate, you still just do so much damage with Duraludon and the Diggersby.
Ooh, and take a look at that Mystical Fire from Gavin's Sylveon as well. Able to drop the special attack from the Lapras, which we saw game 1 wasn't really doing too much damage, and now think about how little damage it's going to do with that special attack drop as well. Let's find out from the Gmax Resonance. That's barely a dent in that Sylveon's health pool.
Yeah, Lapras, when it doesn't have, its weakness policy activated, because, no Comfy this time around is the lead, it just really doesn't do that much damage, and that's why it's, it's something that you really want the policy to go off earlier. That being said, Corviknight does get that, boost immediately, so now it's got screens up, and it's also got, plus defense and attack. Thunderbolt still does a hefty amount from that Duraludon, though, even through the screens.
Yeah, it's going to be about half there, but a double up into the Corviknight with the Mystical Fire as well is just going to be additional chunks of damage. And now Corviknight's not really sitting in an incredibly safe spot. Does go for the attack onto the Sylveon, and it secures the knockout. So Brendan does have a 1 Pokemon lead at the moment.
Yeah, gets a lead there, but I think Corviknight taking so much damage still makes this pretty tricky for him. Despite screens being up, yeah, I mean, these special attacks just do a lot of damage, and Duraludon takes that resonance really, really nicely. So Sylveon having Mystical Fire here is a big deal, able to not only do super effective damage on a Diggersby, but also lower the special attack onto that Lapras. So I think a nice play from Gavin earlier, and, I think Brendan is maneuvering his way around this matchup. It's still just tricky because he's not going to get very much out of his 3 turns of max in terms of damage output. So the Incineroar switching that he's opting for here, we'll be able to get the Intimidate onto Diggersby. Now it's basically how do you weather the storm of Dynamax, given that you've already revealed the Corviknight, and the Corviknight's taking a lot of damage. Going to start with this Incineroar switch out, but some key predictions from Gavin's end could really just secure the knockout here onto Incineroar. I think you're going to play probably pretty safe this turn because there's no need to push the tempo that hard on this very first turn of Dynamax, should you go for it on Gavin's end. He is going to finally commit to Dynamax, so you can see, yeah, Gavin just not maxing turn 1 was a really, really heads-up play that prevented him from just, losing out and burning out too much in the early game.
Absolutely. It allows you to have that resource for later in the game when Brendan's already burned 2 turns of that Gigantamax. So Gavin has this for the long game, and Diggersby getting that Dynamax factor is going to be able to go for a Max Quake here. So into the Lapras, surprisingly, but does get a good chunk of damage, but most importantly is going to be able to get that special defense boost.
Yeah, special defense boost, we saw just how important they were in that last game, especially because so much of the damage is coming out from, the Lapras right now. So Gavin just going for a really, really safe play there. You get a guaranteed special defense boost onto the Diggersby. Thunderbolt's always going to cover the Corviknight, and since Brendan's team has no spin... Look how much that Max Geyser does, or I should say how little that Max Geyser does.
Yeah, the special defense boost and the special attack drop that just does so little damage.
Yeah, I mean, Diggersby is not known to be a really bulky Pokemon, right? But the combination of Lapras just being not super offensive, especially because it's that weakness policy variant, meaning that it's probably opting more for the defenses, means that, yeah, with, Mystical Fire and Friend Guard and these special defense boosts, Diggersby is able to really take these attacks quite nicely. So I think now, the upside for Brendan is that he hasn't taken that much damage, at least on that first turn of Max. This next turn is tricky because, of course, Diggersby pressures a lot right now. For example, you could go for Max Lightning and Thunderbolt, and I think you want to set up that Electric Train so the Duraludon does even more with the Thunderbolt. So if you could maybe predict that, predict and waste another turn of the Dynamax on Diggersby, that would be such a big deal. So let's see how much Gavin gets out of this turn specifically. Yeah,
very safe play coming in from Brendan, switching in the Corviknight, but goes for the Max Lightning into the Lapras. Through the Protect, it does just a little bit of damage and does set up the Electric Terrain, which is specifically important for the Duraludon that has been going for these Thunderbolts. But, well, Brendan's Lapras wasn't doing much before. Might be able to do a little bit more with that weakness policy boost that it just got a chance to get. But the Thunderbolt goes right into the Protect. So really great turn from Brendan here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what you need to try to have a chance of winning this one. However, this next turn is still pretty scary. Electric Terrain is up now, so you can just go for something like Max Lightning onto the Lapras and something like a Thunderbolt onto the Corviknight. It's a relatively safe play. You could maybe go for boosts as well with Max Quake or, speed drops with Max Strike, but I think Max Lightning here right now just puts on so much offensive pressure. So I think the Incineroar switch outlet Brendan's trying to go for here makes a lot of sense. Get another Intimidate on that Diggersby. Wait for that Dynamax to end, because Lapras is the win condition at this point, right? You're not doing any damage really with Incineroar or Comfy. And while Corviknight does a lot of damage in this matchup, it's just already taken so much damage itself, so you shouldn't expect to get more than one attack off unless you're able to get a boost off here. So yeah, looks like it is going to be Max Lightning coming out here.
Yeah, Max Lightning does a decent chunk of damage to the Incineroar, but we'll see what this Duraludon decides to do. Goes for the Thunderbolt, doubling into the Lapras slot, so Incineroar able to survive this, and Corviknight going for a good Brave Bird, and it's able to hang on. Aurora Veil does go away, though, for Brendan's side of the field.
Yeah, so Brendan opting to actually just go straight for damage there instead of something like a Bulk Up or Roost. He knows that Electric Terrain is set up at this point. You know that a Thunder Punch, even after you heal back up with Corviknight, is boosted by Terrain. It's still going to do a ton. You can double up onto that Corviknight slot. So I like the decision here. I think this turn could be huge if you're able to call the, potential protects correctly. I mean, Gavin could easily just stall out the Fake Out here by just going for something like a double protect, but he might feel pressure to target the Corviknight with one Pokemon. So gonna be Diggersby protecting. Let's see. We know Fake Out is going into the Duraludon. So, Brendan didn't go for the double up onto the Duraludon here, which means that it's kind of a relatively neutral turn as it's Iron Bud, into the Diggersby.
Yeah, so, what does Brendan have to do to set up for the win condition at the end of the line? That Lapras, you still have Comfey sitting at a pretty hefty health pool as well.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you pointed out the Comfey because I think, the way you try to win this is basically a Trick Room, right? You sacrifice the Corviknight here, bring Incineroar back in, then you get another Fake Out, another Intimidate onto the Diggersby, and go for something like Fake Out Trick Room, and then maybe Comfey can actually heal up the partner Pokemons as well. So, yeah, Gavin going for just a really safe play this turn. I think last time I was kind of surprised not to see something like a double protect. Brendan had the opportunity to potentially capitalize if he predicted like the protect on Diggersby while Duraludon was protecting. He could go for something like Fake Out onto Duraludon. And, a bunch of options there on the Corviknight. But now at least Brendan's gotten in what he's trying to go for in this late game, which is Trick Room, right? I think Trick Room is pretty much your only way of even trying to win at this point. Comfey could provide pretty good support. So, Comfey here should be able to survive an attack from the Diggersby after all those Intimidates. So, yeah, Fake Out Trick Room here, pretty safe. If you're worried, I guess, about, like, Giga Impact still picking up the knockout, you could go for the Fake Out onto the Diggersby instead. It looks like that's actually what Brendan's opting to go for. So, you have to obviously be very careful of a Flash Cannon coming in. But if you have something like a Babiri Berry that allows you to survive that Flash Cannon, then you will be able to get Trick Room up. So, let's see.
Well, Gavin goes for the switch, so Diggersby able to survive to see another day, and here is the Duraludon making its move into the Comfey, and the berry, it just barely hangs on. Critical hit comes through, but Comfey with that Berry is able to hang on and get this Trick Room off.
Yeah, so, this is what Brendan was going for, a relatively safe Trick Room setup. Does end up taking more damage on the Comfey. It's able to survive even through the critical hit, which I think is a testament to how bulky this Pokemon is. So, I think what's tricky now is how do you really do enough damage to close out this game? Mainly, the big question is how do you do enough damage to the Clefairy, actually? Because Lapras doesn't do that much to it. We know the Comfey has the taunt, so it's able to shut down the Clefairy. Here's a Zheng coming up, but it misses!
It's missed every single thing that it has gone for in this series. And Duraludon hangs on from that Flare Blitz coming in from Brendan's Incineroar. So, this time, though, even though Clefairy did go for this Zheng, it is going to fall for the taunt. But Flash Cannon here from Duraludon is going to be just enough to be able to knock this Comfey out and give Brendan that free switch in to the Lapras.
I think the Zheng Clefairy here is really what makes this so difficult. And I think Gavin has played really smartly with it, right? Switching it in safely. As you see, it outspeeds, Brendan's team because it is a pretty slow Pokemon. So Gavin's basically saying, okay, even if you get Trick Room up, which I know your team is typically focused around, I can still kind of disrupt you with Zheng. And even though Gavin actually hasn't connected with a single Zheng in this game, like, you imagine if you just hit a single one of those, like, you pretty much instantly win. And because Clefairy not having any attacking moves, pretty much forced to switch out here. So the big question is, can you maybe get some critical hits to actually pick up a knockout? Gavin actually opting to play this really safely as well, saying, okay, you can maybe knock out the Diggersby, I will sacrifice that, but now how do you do enough damage with Clefairy? Because Duraludon, even just with a little bit of HP, is able to do so much damage with Thunderbolts. Now you can just bring in Clefairy and go for a relatively safe, say, follow me, Thunderbolt, or, I think Thunderbolt is, the safest option in terms of super effective damage onto Lapras. Maybe you just want to pick up the knockout onto Incineroar, but Gavin bringing this Clefairy has been so huge. I think he's played really smartly with it. He's been able to whittle away at the damage with it. But I think both players really, kind of playing to their outs right now. Brendan realizes I just need to get as much damage off as possible. The double up onto Duraludon makes a lot of sense, forcing the Clefairy to follow me, punishing Gavin if he opts not to go for follow me there. But Gavin, of course, just opting for the safest play here.
Absolutely. That follow me going to direct away all of this offensive pressure away from Duraludon. So this freeze dry, this flare blitz, Clefairy takes those like a champ. And Incineroar, even with that recoil damage, barely able to hang on. But with this Thunderbolt, that is going to do the last bit as well to this Incineroar. And it's just Lapras left. This is the 2v1 scenario that we talked about in the first game, which is coming to fruition here.
Yeah, I think, Brendan maybe needed a critical hit there that last turn, or perhaps potentially a freeze onto the Clefairy to have a shot. But this Duraludon just having a little bit of HP, it's so close to getting knocked out. But the reality is when you have Clefairy out supporting it and no redirection, or sorry, no spread moves, it's just impossible to hit it, right? So this Clefairy has just been so good for Gavin, despite missing all of its things. It's still just provided so much support throughout the course of this set.
Yeah, with Duraludon able to fire off that final Thunderbolt. Oh, not even the final Thunderbolt. Lapras able to hang on through that, but Clefairy still needs one more freeze dry in order to get knocked out, which should buy enough time for Gavin to get the knockout onto this Lapras.
Yeah, so now with Trick Room ending as well, Thunderbolt's going to come out, it's going to pick up the knockout, and we are going to see Gavin Michaels defeat Brendan Zheng in a 2-0 victory. This last game, though, definitely a lot closer than the first one. I think Brendan made the right adjustments that he needed to go for, but you can also see why Gavin is such